Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 7th of July 2015, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I am actually your host, Brian Gerrish, and Mike Robinson is with me in the studio. He's behind the technical desk. We're also going to be joined today by Justin Walker of the British Constitution Group, who's going to be giving us an update on the coming summer budget. Before I bring Justin on, let's just have a recap on the weather across the country at the moment. What everybody is saying is it's a bit of everything: sunshine, grey skies, rain, blustery showers. Let's just leave it at that. And I presume it's the same in Scotland. No doubt I'll be informed if I've got it wrong. Well, where do we go? Let's just have a very quick peek at one of our senior politicians. And here he is, George Osborne, with the ritual of the red case. And of course, as the BBC is saying here, he's promising a summer budget which is going to give us pain, but in order for life to be better in the future. Of course, what he's really doing is spreading the lie of austerity while supporting the corrupt international banks who are simply creating money from nothing. And as we know from the recent events around the home of Tom Crawford in Nottingham, where over 100 police turned out to help support bailiffs removing property unlawfully, we're in a very dangerous position while these banking institutions control not only our politicians, but the country. What can we do about it? Well, Justin Walker here gave a talk a little while ago to Mensa on the subject of the Bradbury Pound, globalisation and the New World Order. And Justin has been making a very big effort to get the truth out there about corruption in the international monetary system. And of course, at the last British Constitution Group conference, he was on stage talking about this very subject. And I know what's in his heart at the moment is to get people to College Green, Westminster tomorrow, in order that there are a group of informed members of the public who can be talking about the Bradbury Pound and calling for reinstatement of the Bradbury Pound. So Justin, over to you. How do you see things at the moment with George Osborne's promise of pain?
Well, hello everybody. What can I say? It's just, as you said, it's all a blatant lie. The thing that we now know beyond all reasonable doubt is that if a nation's tax receipts basically are outweighed by potential expenditure, a sovereign government does not have to go to the private banking and financial sector. The government can issue its own debt-free, interest-free money, scrip, based on the wealth and potential of that nation. And we've got historical precedent. It is the truth. And this man has totally ignored us, along with his boss, Cameron. If you remember, we had 2 writs of mandamus issued against these two. They've totally ignored them. And as far as I'm concerned, as the truth comes out and our numbers grow, they will find themselves in the dock, in front of a jury, and the full weight of common law will be used against them at some point in the future.
Well, Justin, thank you for giving us a positive note on what's happening there, because a lot of people at the moment I know are feeling very down. They see all of this criminality around the British government in Westminster, and it's always good to hear of the fight back. I know that you were also in communications with the, was it the Greek embassy?
Yes,
talking about the Bradbury Pound and effectively what a reintroduction of Bradbury in Greece could do. That appears to have transformed itself into the issuance of script currency. Do you think you really had an impact on events?
It's hard to say. As I said, I emailed with all the details about the Bradbury, the historical precedents of the greenback and the Guernsey pound and all these things. And I gave them my new paper to read. And immediately they emailed me back almost immediately, look, for time's sake, get straight onto the Ministry of Finance. And they gave me the minister's personal email address. Now, of course, that was Yanis Varoufakis. Now, obviously on Ian Crane's program, and I have to say I agreed with a lot of it, his guests completely took apart Yanis Varoufakis, and I'm pretty certain that he was controlled opposition. However, the common sense of the government, the Greek government, having a standby, printing script money based on the wealth of the nation. Yeah, I think they're going to do it. I mean, people are waking up. I mean, I've been tweeting and I've been emailing all sorts of journalists in Greece. One of the good things is many Greeks do speak English. So yes, I'd like to think I've had some sort of positive input into the whole thing. But we'll see. The new finance minister, and just when I've learnt the name Varoufakis, they go and change the old so and so. And I don't know I can't remember what the name of the new fellow is, but I do know he's been to Oxford, and he does look as though he's a lover of the euro. And I think you'll probably find that he is controlled enough to come to a compromise. So we'll see. We'll see. But the important thing is not colonial, but that the idea of scrip is now being recognized by many Greeks. And I think a lot of them will be thinking, why can't we have, a Greek or a drachma scrip to replace the euro and to provide the liquidity needed for a prosperous Greek economy?
Yes. And of course, the other thing we can see out of all this is that the moment we've got nations locked into one currency, if there's a problem with that currency, everybody is affected. There's nowhere to go. There's no escape currencies or reserve currencies. And yet, while we had nationally issued currencies in Europe, a problem in one country did not necessarily impact on one of the others. So the whole of the European Union project, by its amalgamation, the destroying of nation states and the imposition of the euro, seems to me at least to just be making Europe a more dangerous and indeed unstable place. Is that a bit unfair, do you think?
No, I don't. I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we do know that they want some sort of major financial crash. Because they want to see eventually, they globally want a global electronic monetary system, which they are in complete control of and that we are completely compliant to. And they will decide how much money, how much credit we're allowed. I mean, effectively, this is about putting huge power into a tiny number of people's hands. And the more diverse the currencies we have and everything else, the better. And as you know, I always think of good old Thomas Jefferson. And I think it's very important that we keep saying this to ourselves. When a government fears the people, you have freedom. But when the people fear the government, you have tyranny. And we are having tyranny, done to us by these bankers who literally control the politicians and they control the world's money supply. And one of the things that we're going to bring up tomorrow, because, we are going to be wading in a sea of ignorance tomorrow amongst the MPs and everyone else. If we say Bank for International Settlements to your average MP, they will not have heard of it. I mean, Tim Farron, who is about to become the leader of the Liberal Democrats, last year I confronted him on camera and said, do you know what the Bank for International Settlements is? And he said, you're going to tell me, aren't you? Now, that man had been an MP for 9 years and didn't know anything about the Bank for International Settlements, which enjoys diplomatic immunity based in Switzerland and which literally oversees 95% of the world's money and looks after 60 central banks. And he'd never heard of it. Now, gosh, we've got an uphill struggle, but we've got to start tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it.
And Justin, I know that one of the things that you've continually said is that it's important that people do try to educate when they're speaking to the politicians even. While we may brand them as all bad, a lot of it is to do with sheer ignorance as to what's happening. But we've got politicians, there's going to be many police on duty, and of course there's going to be a very large army of the mainstream press and media. So this is an opportunity to talk to these people and of course talk about the real evidence of the Bradbury pound and what it could do if it was reinstated.
Yeah, we're basically going to be history teachers tomorrow. As I said, I want a lot of people to turn up, please. But we're not there to sort of shout slogans or anything like that. We've got plenty of leaflets printed, and in fact, I'll just show one of the posters now. This is a
Should be able to bring you back on. Yeah, there we go.
There you go. This is a poster that we've had done. John's done it for us, and we've got 500 or 600 leaflets, all different types, all explaining the same things. But we just want people to go up to members of the public, even, but politicians, the mainstream media, and the police, and people, and just talk in a calm, relaxed way and inform them of the history of what we're doing. There's not a conspiracy theory at all anywhere along the line. This is all factual, but these are facts that people don't know. So we've just got, in a very gentle way, we are going to literally talk to a lot of people, many of them decision makers. I mean, I'll just give you an example. I mean, I've just emailed 40-something SNP, no, 50-something SNP MPs. Now, I've not heard anything back from them, but we've invited them to come and meet us tomorrow. I'm not holding my breath, but I will guarantee that all those new MPs from the Scottish Nationalists will have never heard of the Bradbury, the Bank for International Settlements, the principles of money supply. They will not know, and yet those people are in Parliament as MPs. So I'm hoping tomorrow that we're going to, and one of the people we've invited is Jeremy Corbyn, because Jeremy is standing as the fourth candidate in the Labour contest, the Labour leaders contest. Now, Jeremy signed an early day motion last year to celebrate and to remember and to call for the restoration of the Bradbury pound, the 100th anniversary. So we know that he's friendly to the principle of national credit. So I've invited him to come across the road to meet with us and to hopefully take it a stage further, because he's in a wonderful position now to promote national credit and the restoration of the Bradbury pound, because a lot of the left, who are very dispirited, who just fear for the austerity cuts, which are going to be announced tomorrow, and everything else. And if we can persuade him to just come up and say, look, it's all a lie. It's all a complete, utter lie. And if somebody as strong as Jeremy Corbyn would say something like that, we could go ahead with leaps and bounds. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that people are going to show courage tomorrow, those who do know about what we're saying, and will come across and actually, clutch the nettle and say, OK, I'm with it, let's go for it. So keeping my fingers crossed.
Justin, how many anti-austerity protesters are you expecting tomorrow?
Well, what we're trying to do, the People's Assembly are meeting at, I think it's about 5 o'clock, and they're going to go for huge numbers, and it's going to be very vociferous, no doubt. And the police will be on their guard. They'll no doubt be kettling. They'll be wanting people to take part in the protest on their way home from work, all that side of things. Now, it would be nice to leaflet those people, but really, we don't want to be seen to be part of a protest. We don't want kettling. We don't want being treated as if we're a demonstration. We are just ordinary, decent human beings who have information that people have not got, and we're going to be there tomorrow to pass that information across. So, as I said, there could be thousands tomorrow late afternoon, but we want to start about midday. I've said between 11:30 and midday. My train doesn't get down there until 10:15, so I'm hoping I can get over there. But if anyone turns up a bit early, don't worry. Just go to College Green. That's where all the media are set up. You'll see all the BBC, Sky Studios, and all that. And we're just asking people, when we come, we'll give you leaflets, we'll give you posters, and then literally, as I say, we're just going to go around talking to people and basically educating them about money supply and what it's all about. But the big protest later on, it would be lovely to be able to leaflet everybody. But you see, that protest will be all about the symptoms. They will not have any solutions.
Justin, thank you very much for that. Are you able to stay with us for the rest of the news today?
Yep, delighted to. I'm just glad our dog's behaving itself.
There's been a few people interested in the small creature on your windowsill behind you. I can say with confidence it is a French bulldog, not a cat, but there we are. So let's, on the subject of information flow and who's telling the truth or not, let's just bring this up on screen. We've got curious about ratings for the UK column, and a number of people have been contacting us and saying, well, if you just Google UK column, it doesn't bring up the website as one of the returns to your search. I just did a screenshot here. We've put in UK column. I get UK Column on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. I get the British Constitution group, but for some mysterious reason, I don't get the home website. Now, we are curious as to what might be going on here. I think, Mike, you've got a couple of comments.
Well, I mean, if you're being relaxed about it, you would say that it's related to the fact that something to do with the new website and perhaps a few links have changed, and maybe they're penalising us for that, and maybe it'll resolve itself over the next few weeks. On the other hand, the other major search engines like Bing and DuckDuckGo, Yahoo, and so on haven't penalised us at all over that. The other thing to notice is if you put a site, if you type into Google site and then a colon and then ukcolumn.org, all is one word, no gaps in between, then you see, in fact, that the website has been indexed correctly by Google. The Google PageRank, which is another sort of measure of how your site is doing with Google, hasn't changed since the site was updated. And so it's all a bit mysterious why all of a sudden it has just disappeared completely out of the... So it is still in the Google index, but it is not appearing in the search results. So maybe there's some SEO experts out there that could give a little bit of advice on this, or maybe it's simply we've been penalized for something by Google, but certainly they're not telling us about it if they have penalised us.
Yeah. Well, I can't imagine anybody would dislike us, Mike. Certainly not connected to the government and Google, so we'll keep an open mind. Now, can I just welcome members of the British Muslim community who I believe that we have a special interest in today's programme because we want to talk about what is essentially propaganda. That's the way it seems to us. And I'd like to start off by just taking us back to the Express article we mentioned yesterday. This was furious Sabine police allowed jihadi to parade banned ISIS flag outside Parliament. And the key part of the story was that somebody was waving supposedly an ISIS jihadi flag, but the police decided, well, we're not going to do anything about that. So the article said, well, this caused a mixture of fury and bewilderment in the public mind, to which we say this is exactly what it was supposed to do, because the aim of this is to essentially produce cognitive dissonance, instability, disturbance in the public mind. And the overall object of that is to create bewilderment and confusion as our brains try to rationalise irrational police action versus what common sense would say should happen. Now, the question is this sort of stuff just accidental in the press, or is there a bit more to it? Well, our attention was focused today on another article, initially this one, also the Express. The pervert will see you now. Doctors with convictions for child porn are being allowed to carry on practicing. And it says that convicted paedophiles are among hundreds of criminal doctors allowed to practice despite being found guilty of crimes including sex attacks, cruelty to children and assault. Now, what was interesting in the article was we suddenly had a straw poll going on. Should convicted doctors be allowed to practice? Basically it went on then to talk about the baseline of right and wrong. And this is a very interesting question because we're seeing these polls coming up in quite a few places, and we'll just have a think about that. But if we just pop that one off the screen a minute, Mike, I just want to move on to another slide. Have a look at this one. And we've got the Express with a big story about a teenager who wanted to bring Sharia law to Britain and kill gay people, and he's going to be jailed. Teenage jihadists who wanted to bring Sharia law to Britain will be jailed today after he plotted to go to Syria to fight for the Islamic State. Now, if you get into this article, it's quite interesting. According to the prosecutor, Sarah Whitehouse QC, Saeed Chowdhury had saved around £3,000 from working in fast food restaurants so he could travel to Syria. In 2014, he attended a demonstration about Gaza. Oh, he's brandishing a banner stating ISIS will bring peace to the Middle East. And this gains the attention of an anti-radicalisation group called Prevent. Let's just highlight that little bit. So this man goes and waves an ISIS flag, and that is used as evidence to help convict him in court. But as we've just seen, another man waves an ISIS flag, and the police don't want to do anything about that. Is this accidental? Well, we at the UK column don't think so. But notice the end part of this. It says the court heard how he became angry and aggressive after he was approached by the group. Well, that's very interesting. So he gets approached by an anti-radicalisation group, and what does it seem to make him do? It seems to make him become more angry, perhaps more radicalised. Well, just have a look at this, this section of that slide, because we've got the same thing going on. We've got another straw poll, should he be jailed? And what I'm going to say is the media is fishing here for the public reaction to this article. And I think this is to do with the manipulation of the public mind, which we're going to call reframing. But what about this organisation Prevent? Well, if we go to a Guardian article, we had a policeman here, Mr. Babu, who said very clearly that this was toxic, that the UK's anti-radicalisation Prevent strategy was a toxic brand. Now, where did this thing come from? Well, British government's flagship anti-radicalisation strategy, Prevent, has become a toxic brand, widely mistrusted. And the gentleman went on to say why. He said, we've now got cameras being stuffed into Asian Muslim communities, huge amount of money spent on it. And what it was actually doing was making people feel uncomfortable. They were under the microscope. And this was counterproductive and discriminating against Muslims. So this gentleman, if his opinion is right, is saying what Prevent was actually do was not preventing extremist views, it was helping to create them. Could that be possible? Well, we think it could well be, especially when we get the British government producing so-called documents to calm people down. Have a look at the document itself. You can get hold of it online. Here it is, Prevent Strategy. The document originally cost £28.50, so this was clearly an important document to get widely disseminated, or perhaps not. And if we have a look into it, a lot of wording at the hand of Theresa May. Intelligence indicates that a terrorist attack in our country is highly likely. Experience tells us that the threat comes not just from foreign nationals, but also from terrorists born and bred in Britain. It's therefore vital that our counter-terrorism strategy contains a plan to prevent radicalisation and stop would-be terrorists from committing mass murder. Osama bin Laden may be dead, but the threat from Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorism is not. Then it goes on to sort of blame previous governments, I think, for what's gone wrong. But later on, we can come into this bit. It says, we will not work with extremist organisations that oppose our values of universal human rights, equality before the law, democracy and full participation in our society. Well, remember that this is the British Conservative government speaking that's actively backed terrorists operating in Syria. And of course, we had Conservative MP Brooks Newmark mixing with the Free Syrian Army on the Turkish border. And he was casually saying, well, of course, they are linked through to the terrorist Al-Nusra group. If we look at the hundreds of thousands of people who've died as a result of the British government's unlawful overseas wars, Iraq in particular, we might wonder who the terrorists really are. But of course, the document contains this famous signature, and what better person to have signing this document than Theresa May, Home Secretary and Minister for Women and Equalities. And she says, finally, we will do more than any other government before us to promote integration, but we will do so separately and differently from Prevent. So we've got a policy of Prevent, but we're not actually going to run it, except when we need to pick up young men who Prevent clearly thinks are potential terrorists. Something is wrong. Well, the BBC has been into it, and have a look at this. Prevent strategy, is it failing to stop radicalisation? And again, we've got comment from the University of London says it's failing. And if the idea was to understand the roots of extremism, the roots of radicalisation by putting a magnifying glass across the Muslim communities, what has happened has widened the schism between the Muslims and us and the British other. But I was interested to see that the BBC was, if I can just bring it on screen somewhere, there we are, the BBC nudging the public to accept armed police on the streets, presumably in order to counter terrorism. And this was doubly interesting because the BBC uses the Henry Jackson Society to say that we need to get in amongst the communities to reframe people. Justin, before I go on through this analysis, because believe me, it gets worse to see what the British government is doing, what's your thoughts on what we are seeing here?
Well, I always remember that the Muslim community and Islam as a religion condemn usury, and they don't much like the banking system and everything else. And the one thing that I've learnt over the many, many years, it's always been in the background, that the global elite are trying their best to engineer that clash of civilizations between Islam and Christianity, the West and whatever. So I'm just conscious that, we have I have a lot of good friends who are Muslims. I've been to Iran, and I always remember when I was driving in a taxi in Iran, I had nothing but wonderful hospitality in Tehran. People I met, ranging from government right through to ordinary people in their homes. You couldn't ask for nicer people. And I just remember this taxi driver, he just turned around and he said, "Can you explain to me why you English hate us?" And I said, "We don't hate you." He said, "Well, that's what comes across." So I just find it very, very sad indeed when I see all this blatant, as you say, manipulation and reframing going on, because, we are all united as the human race against these people who control the world's money supply, who put us all into boxes, who attempt to trigger wars and everything else. We as humanity have got to come together to defeat this mindset.
Justin, thank you for that. I think Mike just wants to come in on that question.
Yeah, I'm just interesting that you mention Clash of Civilizations, Justin, because of course, if you actually read Huntington's original paper and the book that followed it on the Clash of Civilizations, one of the points that he's making is that in the past, warfare has been and conflict has been on the basis of very clearly demarked lines. So it was us against the Germans or us against the French or whatever it was in the past in history. And that, of course, under the Clash of Civilizations doctrine, you won't actually know who your enemy is. Is your enemy your next door neighbor? Is it the person down the street? Of course, up until now, they've been promoting this on the basis of Christian against Muslim in loose terms and so on. But if you've noticed in recent weeks and months, they're beginning to promote the idea of the white British jihadist. And so they're encouraging you to believe that more and more people are joining jihad, having converted to Islam, but people who were originally from what would be typically viewed as white Christian backgrounds. And so they're actually taking the Clash of Civilizations doctrine that one step further, where you won't know whether your neighbor who is a Muslim is a jihadist or a terrorist or not, but you're actually not going to know whether your white middle-class British neighbor is your enemy or not. And what they're really attempting to do is this massive destabilization of society and total chaos.
And fear.
And fear and complete breakdown of communities. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. No, it's dreadful. But you see, we found their Achilles heel. Once people wake up to the fact the only reason this mindset can control us is because they control our money. And once we expose that, then it's like in the Wizard of Oz when you pull back the curtain and you find a wizard old man controlling everything. We will expose them for what they are, a pathetic little bunch of egotistical psychopaths. And, well, they will lose their power. Once we take away their right to issue and control our money, they're lost.
Justin, I couldn't agree more. Before I ask you some penetrating questions about Eric Pickles, who we can now clearly see in the lower left-hand screen, we'll just return to the Express article. We'll just return to this Express article. This is really quite incredible. I've put here, Express spins the facts and ramps up the hatred. Exactly what you're talking about. Is this deliberate? Well, of course, we don't know. But let's go into this article again. It says a new survey revealed how half of Britain's 3 million Muslims could support the terror group. The figures suggest that 1.5 million of the country's Muslims could be ISIS sympathisers. And now we've got 42 million Muslims supporting ISIS across the globe. Study based on 4 recent polls reveals shocking level of support. And on it goes. Let's just highlight a bit of that because, of course, we've got the famous conditional word, could support, could be ISIS sympathisers. But suddenly the could is translated into a fact, apparently 42 million. And then it goes on to say, where did the information come from? Well, it came from Ryan Morrow of the Clarion Project. Now, that was a very tiny bit at the end of the article, but we decided to get digging. So let's do just that. Who or what is the Clarion Project? Well, as usual, they love talking about themselves. Here they are. Let's bring it on screen. There are times that require people to step out of their comfort zone, to step up for justice, tolerance and moderation. We know going in that direction, the repercussions of taking action will draw a rain of accusations and attacks from the forces we're confronting. But they decided they'd do it anyway. So they were founded in 2006, Clarion Project, formerly Clarion Fund Incorporated. But don't worry, because they're independently funded. They're a non-profit organisation dedicated to exposing the dangers of Islamic extremism while providing a platform for the voices of moderation and promoting grassroots activism. And on it goes, on and on and on. So we decided we should dig a little bit deeper. Well, let's bring in the man himself. Here he is, Ryan Morrow, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project. He says non-profit organisation, on it goes. But down at the bottom is where we should be looking. Let's blow that up a bit and read it. It says that Morrow is also a consultant to government agencies and an adjunct professor of Homeland Security. Morrow formerly served as an intelligence analyst for Tactical Defence Concepts, a maritime-related security group. So here we've got a man who is clearly in the heart of US intelligence systems, apparently now being independent and putting forward an independent view that 1.5 million British Muslims are suddenly terrorists, and they would have us believe that this is all justifiable.
What age is he?
I think he's probably about 24. I don't know, Mike, but
so he must know a lot then.
Well, I think he probably knows a lot because a lot of stuff is being fed to him to then spread as if it's coming from an independent source. But my point is that the Express newspaper would have the British public believe that we have this huge problem amongst the British Muslim community, Islamic community, and what are we actually seeing when we dig for the source of this information? It appears to have come from straight out of the heart of the US intelligence world. Well done, Express. But I'm glad to say somebody got there before we did, because let's have a look at Think Progress. Here's the headline: Meet the donors behind the Clarion Fund's Islamophobic documentary, The Third Jihad. And I'd encourage all of our viewers and listeners to go and have a look at this article, because there's a lot of information. The New York Times report today on how the New York Police Department and the producers behind a controversial film are stonewalling on why the movie was screened to New York Police Department officers. And they say that in 2011, the news broke that the department had used the film in training. A top police official denied it, but said it had been, quote, mistakenly screened a couple of times. But years later, the reality was that the third jihad had actually been shown on a continuous loop for between 3 months and 1 year of training. So what was clearly going on was that American police officers were being brainwashed into thinking anybody of the Muslim faith was a potential jihadist. And it says in the article, during that time, at least 1,489 police officers, from lieutenants to detectives to patrol officers, saw the film. So this is pretty in your face here. Who was providing this dodgy film? Well, it was, as they say, the shadowy Clarion Fund. So we've already got international exposure in the press and media that Clarion was producing, as they say, Islamophobic films in order to reframe the mind of American police officers. And the British newspaper, The Express, is now trying to use this same organisation, as Mike says, to get people at each other's throats in the United Kingdom. Well, who would donate to this organisation? Well, this is the information produced within that article. And what is interesting is that there are some very interesting people putting the money in, and a mere $18 million is drifted in from what's called the Donors Capital Fund. Meanwhile, there's private individuals and organisations pumping money into an organisation which, in our view, is clearly designed to stir up hatred between East and West, Christians, Muslims, and now it appears within British community. So we say, if you're out there, whatever you are, Christian, Muslim, whatever, just be aware that as far as Britain's media is concerned, they are prepared to use dross sources like this in order to get people at each other's throats. And I'll just end with this. Clarion's ongoing production of Islamophobic films and nearly continuous screenings of Iranium no doubt requires constant fundraising efforts. As highlighted in the Centre for American Progress report, Fear Incorporated, the Islamophobia network, including Clarion, raises large sums of money from a combination of high-profile and under-the-radar donors. Beg your pardon there. Could it be any more clear that we've got something very nasty going on here? Michael, Justin.
Well, I'm just going to say once again, when you said how much money they had, $18 million or something. I mean, you know, when you look at the budget that we're running on, and, you know, we obviously do need more money to keep UK Column, Business Constitution Group and everything else, but we're running on an absolute shoestring. And yet all these think tanks and all these organizations that suddenly come out of the woodwork we've not heard of, and you'll probably find that George Soros and his money is somewhere behind it. And as you say, it's just feeding poison into the system, not the truth, that's for certain. So, yeah, I'm just hoping there's going to be a big backlash against all these think tanks and everything else, which the media love to report, because it's just in your face now. It's just common sense that we're all being nudged and pushed into a particular way of thinking. And, well, it's just got to come to an end. And I'm hoping there's going to be a backlash very shortly.
Couldn't agree more. I just thought we'd rub this home, rub it in by coming back to that Express article. And here we are, teenager wanted to bring Sharia law to Britain and kill gay people. These are presumably the same gay people that I think the Express were telling us were rushing overseas to join up with ISIS. We exposed that a while ago. But consider how the Express story might look if we put the real facts in, which is they'd used this man, Ryan Mauro, as a source, and he's acting effectively for the US Department of Homeland Security and other government security agencies to claim that 1.5 million British Muslim are extremists. If they'd put a photograph of this man and made the claim, would the British public swallow it? Well, they wouldn't. So what we've got is, I think, deceit here by the Express. but it's pretty vile stuff because, of course, we're likely to get violence out of their tactics. Maybe the Express would like to answer our criticisms. And I'm going to drift from that back to Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, which we've reported over several years now, where we pointed out it was remarkable that when an Asian gentleman, a Muslim, came forward to try and protect white youngsters at the former Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, despite making over 80 reports to Thames Valley Police, they simply did not want to know. And then, of course, he was harassed and victimised and hounded out of his job. Is this accidental? Well, we didn't think so. We think it was absolute bias by Thames Valley Police, again, to try and pin the blame on the Asian community. All paedophiles are Asians, when the good Asian stands up to do what is right as a member of the community. Thames Valley Police under Sarah Thornton, Chief Constable, didn't want to know. Accident or design? We think it's design. And finally, the BBC, as we pointed out, had been reporting that Devon and Cornwall's Chief Constable had been complaining that there wasn't enough money and he was going to have to sack people. But good old BBC, their analysis was right, and no money on the scam of austerity. And Chief Constable Sean Sawyers said, we're going to have to get rid of people. Well, thank you very much for the astute viewer who thought we might like to see this. And it's a little exchange on Twitter between the BBC and Sean Sawyer, the Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall, and they're having a discussion over the mug he was given when he did the little lunchtime chat with the BBC. So the man who says, my police force has got no money for proper policing and chasing criminals, has got money to sit at his desk wasting time in a very puerile chat with the BBC. And then, of course, you want to get in the advertisement for yourself. This is equivalent to Bernard Hogan Howe, who's starring in a BBC spaghetti western about the Metropolitan Police at the moment. But here is the Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall Police, the man who can use 4 police officers to hound down child abuse victim Melanie Shaw, wasting taxpayers' money, twittering about his teacup. A last comment from you, Justin, or perhaps your wonderful bulldog.
Yes, I'm beginning to feel like Blofeld, Donald Pleasance stroking his white cat. Well, I'm afraid the dog's sort of there you are. Like to say hello, Walter. There you go.
Trouble is, it's hard to say where the dog ends and you start, Justin.
Don't upset him. As I said, he's got a bit of a temper, and you called him a poodle today, so I've told him that, and he's not a happy dog. But being serious for a moment, yeah, I mean, what happened to Melanie this weekend with the police was absolutely appalling. There's no doubt about it. We've got lots of rogue elements within the police who need to be outed, as it were, and but I'm hoping tomorrow that we're going to meet a lot of good policemen, police constables, who are there because of their oath, and they know what they're about. They know the strength of common law and everything else. And I'm hoping that we can recruit a lot of people tomorrow in police who will then go back and discuss what we're saying with their colleagues over a coffee or whatever, and hopefully let's see if they will start to question what's going on within these in their higher ranks, because it's not good. It's not good at all.
Okay, Justin, thank you very much for that. Thank you for joining us. Last comment from me is to say, whoever you are, whatever your religion, whatever the colour of your skin, the only way to sort out the mess, which is David Cameron's Conservative Britain 2015, is to be working together with neighbours, with friends, with family, and sticking together, because what the British state would do is divide and rule, and our prediction is they are desperate. The British state is desperate to create violence on Britain Street to break us apart. So the golden rule is love one another, your family and your neighbour, and do as much good as you can for your fellow man. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.